The most popular entry-level turntable on the market today is the Audio-Technica AT-LP60X. It was introduced in 2019 at the attractive price of less than $100, but since then the price has shot up to almost $150, and if you want the version with Bluetooth output, that'll cost you over $200. And while most people who own one are happy with it and give it good reviews, myself included, there is a small but vocal minority of vinyl enthusiasts who criticize it because of its cheap plastic cabinet and its lack of an upgradable phono cartridge and adjustable counterweight. So I was intrigued to discover a new entry-level turntable by Electro-Home, which does have an adjustable counterweight and upgradable phono cartridge. It also has a cabinet made of wood instead of plastic, an Audio-Technica stylus, and an automatic speed control motor. All of this for a list price of $99.99, and it's currently on sale on Amazon and eBay for under $85. There's also a version with Bluetooth and USB outputs for $119. Electro-Home is a Canadian brand that has been around since 1907. They're currently owned by CWD, the same parent company who also owns the Fluence brand of high-quality turntables. So is this Electro-Home turntable going to give you Fluence quality at a bargain price, or is it too good to be true? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that is to buy one and try it out. So that's exactly what I did. Here's what you get when you take it out of the box. You get the turntable itself with the dust cover already attached, the platter mat sitting on top, the user manual, some audio cables, and an accessory box which may be easy to miss because it's a white box tucked into the white styrofoam packaging, so make sure not to throw this out. And inside that accessory box you get the power supply, which puts out 12 volts DC, and the counterweight. Once you have everything unpacked, setting it up is easier than many other turntables because you don't need to attach the dust cover and install the belt and platter. That's already done for you. All you need to do is put on the platter mat and then install and adjust the counterweight. The front of the counterweight has numbers on it, but unlike many other turntable counterweights, this is not a separate dial that rotates, which means it's pre-calibrated to the cartridge this comes with, so you don't need to balance the tone arm. The manual says to align the counterweight to the end of the tone arm with the 0 at the top. Slowly push the counterweight onto the tone arm until it clicks twice. Then rotate the counterweight counterclockwise a full rotation so that 0 is aligned at the top. This will set the tracking force to 3 grams. So following those instructions, I positioned it so that the 0 is at the top, and I'll slide it on. That was the first click. That was the second click. Now I'll rotate it counterclockwise a full rotation until the 0 appears at the top again. And now it should be set to 3 grams. So I'll release the latch and take off the stylus protector and put it on my scale to measure it. And we get about 3.8 grams instead of 3 grams. Now, although this does not match what the manual said, a tracking force of around 3.8 grams is within spec for this cartridge. Audio-Technica recommends a tracking force of 3.5 grams plus or minus 1 gram, so this is well within that range and will not damage your records. And it is actually pretty normal for the numbers on the counterweight to not exactly match the actual tracking force of the tone arm, even on much more expensive turntables, which is why it's a good idea to have a scale to measure it. But still, a difference of 0.8 grams between what the counterweight says and what it's actually measuring is higher than what I would consider to be acceptable. Luckily, I discovered an easy workaround, and that is to simply forget about what the numbers on the counterweight say and take one of the RCA cables it comes with and find the thickest part of the plug and stick that between the counterweight and this round part here, and then turn it until it touches. You can feel it touch, and now it's actually set to 3 grams. Now I'll measure it after doing that simple trick, and it's almost exactly 3 grams, just like the manual said it should be. Obviously, it's not good that the numbers on the counterweight are not accurate, and that's something they should fix. But at least if you do follow what the manual says, it's not going to hurt anything. And if you want to get it perfect, there's a super easy workaround. Next, of course, plug in the power supply, which unfortunately has a rather short cord. The main power switch is on the back, which is not the most convenient location, but this uses so little power that it's no big deal to leave it on all the time. Now you'll need to connect it to some sort of sound system, since like most higher quality turntables, this does not have any speakers built in. If you're going to be using an external phono preamp or an amplifier or receiver with a magnetic phono input, make sure the preamp switch is off, and now you can connect the included audio cables and ground wire, which screws onto this terminal here. Or if you're going to be using powered speakers or any kind of audio system with a line level input, make sure the preamp switch is turned on and then the ground wire is not necessary. For my tests, I'll be using a pair of Bose Companion 2 powered speakers. I'll try it out and let you hear what it sounds like in a moment, but first let's take a look around and see what you get. It has a smoked plastic dust cover. The cabinet is made of a wood fiberboard material. The exterior is covered with a vinyl wood grain veneer applique. It's not going to fool anyone into thinking it's real wood, but I'd rather have fake wood grain than black plastic. On the bottom of the turntable, it has soft rubber feet which have a bit of flex to them to help absorb vibrations. The platter is unfortunately made of plastic, but it does come with the felt platter mat, and it's not quite full size, but it is large enough to fully support a 12-inch record. And for playing those 7-inch records with the large center hole, you do get a 45 RPM adapter and a peg to store it on when you're not using it. The tone arm is made of metal and has a clamp to secure it in place when you're not operating the turntable, and a cueing lever which allows you to gently lower the stylus onto the record. The speed selector is rather small and inconveniently located because the cueing lever tends to get in the way when it's in the lowered position. But this does allow you to switch between 33 and 45 RPM, and it has a redundant off position. I really don't know why they include that off position because the turntable is auto stop. I can engage one of the speeds and you'll see it does not begin to rotate until I move the tone arm above the beginning of the record. And then when it reaches the end of the record, it will automatically stop. And you can close the lid while playing a 12-inch record and it will fit completely within it. At least from the front and sides, there is a cutout in the back of the lid where the record does stick out slightly, but not enough that it'll rub against anything you may have behind the turntable. Unfortunately, if you prefer to remove the dust cover entirely, it's not going to be easy. It's held on by 2 clips, and you'll need a screwdriver to pry them out of the way before you can lift it off. And on the bottom there's an information sticker saying it's model RR35, assembled in China, manufactured in September 2022, designed and engineered in Canada with love. Now finally, let's hear what it sounds like. First, just playing through my speakers. Sounds good to me. Here's a track called White Jetta, which I'm partial to because I drive one. Now let me give you some direct hookup samples of what it sounds like.
Command records are recorded wide range from 10 cycles to well beyond 15,000 cycles. Our recording characteristics are, in addition, based on RIAA standards, and your compensation or tone control should be set to the RIAA point as indicated on your preamplifier for the following tests.
Contemporary music means up-to-date, innovative, and constantly changing. As a client of Network, you'll receive new releases reflecting current musical trends. It stands to reason that if your project is to be current, then so should your music. Sound great? Good.
For an inexpensive entry-level turntable, I think the sound quality is entirely acceptable. But the real question is, does it sound as good as or better than the ATLP60X? So here's a direct comparison between the two. The difference between them isn't massive, but it is definitely noticeable. The Electro-Home has a more bright and crisp sound, maybe on the verge of being a bit shrill, while the ATLP60X has much deeper and richer bass and has overall a more high-fidelity sound. Even though you can loosen these two Allen screws and then gently twist the cartridge to adjust alignment, at least on mine, there's no need to do so. They got it right at the factory. I have this bare-walled arc protractor which has these two grids on it which are designed for checking that alignment. And if I put the stylus down at the first position, that looks pretty much perfect to me. And if I swing it over to the second position on the grid, that also looks pretty darn close to perfect. Another thing I'm happy to say is perfect on this turntable is the speed accuracy. We can check it with this strobe disc. When viewed under electric lighting that operates at the AC line frequency, which is 60 Hz here in North America, this outer ring of strobe marks should appear to be stationary when the turntable is rotating at exactly 33 1/3 RPM. And that's exactly what we get. The strobe marks look like they're not even moving. And the same is true of this inner ring of strobe marks, which is designed for checking the speed at 45 RPM. And once again, we get the same effect. The strobe marks appear to be frozen. And just as important as whether or not the turntable is rotating at the correct speed is whether or not it's rotating smoothly and evenly instead of bobbing up and down like you often get on cheap record players. And on this one, I'm happy to say it is rotating smoothly and evenly. It's never going to be exactly perfect. You're always going to get a little bit of wobble, but on this one, it's minimal. Also minimal is the amount of noise and vibration from the turntable motor. I can't hear it at all at 33 1/3 RPM, and even at 45 RPM, I can't hear it unless I put my ear up to it. So it's not like a lot of cheap record players where you can hear the motor groaning and whining. This one is very smooth and quiet. And here's a measurement of the speed accuracy and wow and flutter using a special test record. The speed is as close to perfect as you can get, and the wow and flutter is hovering around 0.15% WRMS. But you may have noticed there's no adjustment for anti-skating. Usually on higher quality turntables, there's a dial you can turn or a little weight hanging on a string that you can adjust. But the lack of an adjustment for anti-skating does not necessarily mean that the turntable does not have anti-skating. There are many turntables in which the anti-skating is internally calibrated and no user adjustment is provided. But unfortunately on this turntable it does, because if I put the stylus down on a laser disc, it rapidly swings towards the center, indicating the lack of any anti-skating. But the lack of anti-skating does not necessarily cause any severe detriment to the sound quality or the life of your records. It just means the stylus won't be following the groove as accurately as it should be. I removed the platter to show you the optical speed sensor system. On this side there's an infrared LED, and on this side there's an infrared light detector. And as the turntable platter rotates, it has these gear teeth here which alternately let the light through and block it. And the sensor counts how many times per second the light is blocked and uses that to measure the speed of the turntable. And then it automatically adjusts the speed of the motor to keep the speed constant and correct. Inside the bottom it has the motor, a circuit board with the timing crystal on it for the optical speed sensor system, the main circuit board with the preamp on it, and two more optical sensors for the auto stop system. The motor uses the part number of a Mabuchi motor but was not made by them. It's some generic Chinese brand. There's a lot to like about the Electro Home turntable. First, of course, is the bargain price. There's really nothing comparable to it on the market today for at or below $100. Then there's the attractive wood grain cabinet. No, it's not real wood, but I still think it looks good. And the speed accuracy is perfect. And even though the platter is made of plastic and is slightly undersized, it still rotates smoothly and evenly, and the motor is quiet, and the wow and flutter is pretty good. And many people will appreciate the ability to adjust the counterweight and upgrade the phono cartridge. And it sounds pretty good. No, not as good as an ATL P60X, but if you're upgrading from one of these things, it certainly will be a huge improvement. It would be a real winner if they could improve the calibration of the counterweight, add anti-skating, and improve the quality of the built-in preamp. But even as is, if you're looking for a decent turntable at a bargain basement price, it's a good choice.